once in a while, Nancy Pelosi does engage in grade A trolling against Donald Trump. And I think the latest stunt that she's pulling is a good example, but many of you might disagree, so let's discuss. So we know that Donald Trump has been acting erratically following treatment for his coronavirus diagnosis. And so he's been on steroids, he's been on remdesivir, he's been on some, I forget the name of the other drug that we just spent half the show talking about. What was it again, Cenk? Regeneron, perfect. Yeah, so he's on all these things and he's been acting crazier than usual. You can see the erratic behavior on Twitter alone. So Nancy Pelosi had a press conference today where she mentioned the 25th Amendment. And that would mean that she could push for Donald Trump to be evaluated by physicians to make sure that his mental health is in the right place. And look, is this gonna go anywhere? Probably not, which is why I say it's grade A trolling. But let me give you the details on how it would work. This is reported by Kyle Cheney over at Politico, who writes that Pelosi and Representative Raskin plan to introduce legislation tomorrow to establish a commission under the 25th Amendment charged with evaluating the president's mental and physical capacity. Raskin has already filed very similar legislation. It creates a congressional body, which is actually contemplated in the 25th Amendment itself, made up of doctors, psychiatrists, and former executive branch officials to make judgments if a president's health is failing. And he also, by the way, shares the wording of the legislation in his Twitter thread. This again is Kyle Cheney from Politico. And then he says, this is not a bill that's gonna go anywhere anytime soon, but it is certainly going to provoke Trump. And so, Cenk, what do you think? I mean, I know that it's not gonna go anywhere, but I do always enjoy political stunts that troll Trump. We know that he's incredibly insecure. We know that he gets set off very easily, especially if it's a woman who's doing the trolling. So if Nancy Pelosi is gonna be ineffective when it comes to legislation like stimulus that Americans desperately need right now, in the very least, she should be trolling Donald Trump. That's where I stand on that.
Yeah, so there's a couple of different components to this. First of all, I think that they literally should have used the 25th Amendment a long time ago. I think he's totally mentally unstable. He thinks injecting bleach might have cured coronavirus. He suggested nuking a hurricane. He thinks that the noise from windmills causes cancer. He thinks if you exercise, you deplete the energy of your body and hence will die quicker. And we can go on and on. I think he is so unintelligent that it borders on mentally incapacitated. And so I'm not the only one that thinks that. A significant portion of his cabinet, who would be the relevant people here, have thought that in the past. According to reporting, his own defense secretary, Jim Mattis, considered using the 25th Amendment. There was a report out back in the day where apparently several people inside the White House thought, should we convene? The president's an obvious lunatic. And so I don't think it's just trolling. I think they should have used it a long time ago. If she's doing it for trolling, great, that's good too, okay? But I think they should take it very seriously. And especially now, he's totally off the rails, threatening to arrest Biden, Obama, Hillary Clinton, calling Kamala Harris communist monsters, saying he's cured when he's still an active coronavirus patient. I can go on and on. So they actually should do it. Knowing the Democrats, there's no way they're gonna do it. And besides which, they don't really have the power. I can explain the mechanics of that in a second, but I think you were gonna say something.
Yeah, what I was gonna say is, I wanted to play some of the video featuring Nancy Pelosi during the press conference today, mentioning the 25th Amendment. I want you guys to get the full context of what she said. So take a look at that.
Could you just give us what your prospects are at this moment?
Well, I don't know what the prospects are when we hear people saying I'm young and I'm a perfect specimen, instead of addressing the fact that 50,000 people were infected, reported to be infected yesterday. Nearly 1,000 people died. What are we talking about here? Tomorrow, by the way, come here tomorrow. We're going to be talking about the 25th Amendment, but not to take attention away from the subject we have now.
No, more like So she has it in her, Cenk. She has it in her, okay? It's just that she doesn't care about the issues that actually impact Americans every single day, like a stimulus bill. But like, she should be doing this every day. She can do it. I was actually thinking at one point, well, it's hard, like, I don't want to say anything that sounds ageist, but there were a few responses to Trump featuring Nancy Pelosi and Schumer, and they just looked unenthusiastic. They had no energy, and I'm just like, I don't know, maybe she doesn't have it in her anymore. But clearly, watching that video, she's got it in her. So more of this. How about do more of this every single day up until the election? How about you fight? How about you remember those single payer healthcare posters that you're keeping in your basement? Remember who you allegedly used to be and actually fight. That would be nice.
Yeah, no, I know she's got a fight in her. Just have any of her beloved corporate Democrats primaried by a progressive, and you'll see what kind of fight she has in her. That's when they get vicious. And I know that her and Democratic leadership have called state legislators across the country to make sure that we keep money in politics. So she's got no problems doing anything that's tough or underhanded and political and calculating. She just almost never chooses to use it to fight Republicans. So here's an example where she is great. See, like people think, oh, everything is personal. So we are commenting against Pelosi. We must have some sort of weird grudge from back in high school or something. We don't know Pelosi personally. So if she does great things, we'd love to give her compliments and give her credit where credit is due. And there's a good one. I'm super happy she's just talking about the 25th Amendment. I'm happy it's real. I'm happy if it's trolling. So great, right? I'd love to give her more credit. It's just she almost never fights Republicans or Trump. I mean, what do I ask the Democrats to do? To do press conferences all the time where they say obvious, easy talking points against Republicans. They almost never do it. So here's one time they did it. Thank you. Wonderful. Great. Keep going.
And look, and what you do through this type of trolling is you plant a seed, right? And if you keep at it, it builds the narrative, which I think is actually a very accurate narrative regarding Trump's mental fitness. I think that that's something that we should be forced to think about and talk about every single day. And planting that seed is important. So I'm glad she did that.
So last two things here. First of all, Anna, 1,000% right on that. It's all in the framing and the branding, and that's why it's so important to come out and make your point honestly over and over again, so that it gets drilled into people's heads. If I was the leading Democrats, I would have been talking about the 25th Amendment for the last 2 years at least. So until people were having a debate, is Donald Trump literally crazy or just acts crazy? You see, you can't lose that debate. It's a win-win either way. But these folks, they just don't. They don't have the fight in them when it comes to Republicans. We've talked about that a lot. Now, the second thing is, I just want to be clear on the mechanics of the 25th Amendment. So it doesn't go to Congress unless something very specific happens. So there's Section 3 and Section 4. Section 3 is when the president voluntarily gives power to the vice president for a brief period of time. So presidents have done this plenty of times in the past, including George W. Bush, who gave power of the presidency to Dick Cheney a couple of times when he went in for surgery. Very normal, very standard. By the way, Trump could have done that when he went to Walter Reed when at the height of his fever and at the height of his ailments from coronavirus, and people suggested he'd do that, or in the height of his treatment as he's taking steroids that play with your emotions and your judgment. But Trump, of course, was like, no way, I hold on to power, right? And he's a conspiracy theorist to begin with. No way he's ever gonna do that. But Section 4 is involuntary, where the vice president says the president has been incapacitated. It might just simply because he didn't know he was gonna go into surgery. He had a heart attack, that he's in surgery, then the vice president says, I wanna exercise the 25th Amendment. Or it might be that the president has lost his mind. Then you go to the cabinet. The majority of the cabinet has to agree with the vice president. If the president then comes back to a position where he can assert authority, if he does, he automatically gets the power back, unless the vice president and the cabinet continue to dispute that the president has clear capacity to lead, in which case it would go to Congress and you'd need super majorities in Congress. It is a very, very hard thing to do. You'd have to have a majority of his own cabinet and a super majority of both houses of Congress to say, yes, the president is incapacitated. So it's almost never going to happen. But I think that under Trump, there was a real reason to flirt with it, and his own cabinet, at least some portions of his own cabinet, thought so as well.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.